so far? Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where you heard about this, but GSUS has banned me today, so I'm no longer involved in the national server. I think they just don't like cooperative organizing or working with cooperatives or having accountability or any of those fun things. So I don't know why they banned me. They just banned me, so I have no idea. But that happened this morning. So I'm talking to the California group, but I mean, I wasn't expecting anyone to get on because I figured they would have removed this from the server.
They didn't, and I just got a ping. There's the only thing I get like actual like audio notifications for is like events. So this came up and I jumped on because I figured I'm not doing anything else today.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, it's up to you if you want to have a recorded, documented discussion on GSUS. We can even review what happened last week. Last week there was like 10 people on the call because of the whole emergency with day and everything, and we discussed all the issues with GSUS, and obviously that has in the last week become even more extensive, and obviously, you know, it's just there's a very small group of people who don't follow the values of decentralization, dissent, and diversity, right? So it's a very weird situation. In California, we're talking about maybe doing our own thing. I don't know. It might not go anywhere and I'll just leave. But either way, I'm involved in a lot of movement organizing and cooperative building globally and regionally.
Mm-hmm.
And if GSUS is anti-cooperative, then I would never be involved. There's just no way if it's anti-co-op, you know? So
Yeah.
GSUS doesn't have to function cooperatively, but the idea that you could have cooperative projects would be a major issue. And especially since everything is so opaque and secret and there's no way to verify anything or have decisions or anything, it's just very odd. And I was involved for a year. I put in about like a little under 500 hours and I was just thrown away like trash today. Not even like a mention of why or no, there's no rights, there's no membership rights. It's just thrown away like trash.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been keeping up on much of anything last few weeks. So I don't know. This is all news to me. And I'm still kind
So
of...
you haven't heard about all the day stuff either.
No, no.
Well, I'll just give you an update to that because that's actually kind of interesting. It has nothing to do with me, which makes me feel better because I hate being the focus of everything.
Sure.
But basically, last week, towards the end of the week, GSUS on the main website, I think it was Eliza or someone, put 5051 as a partner.
Oh.
And there's so many issues with 5051. In many ways, the same issues that I see with GSUS, that there's just no accountability, that it just does whatever it wants. It's like basically this whole like, you know, echo chamber of just like they just want the people who are supporting their own cause and their own needs. It's obviously very different than here, but it's still the same sort of control top-down thing. And people were outraged, and it was all discussed obviously secretly and privately. There was no emergency meetings, like no one ever talked about it. I've never even had a meeting to really talk about it except here last week. If you watch that video, it was pretty impressive. Anyways, the bottom line is that Day and someone named Jaden, they both quit very publicly after the meetings, and they are both like very integral, especially Day, you know, being very integral to the organization. So then a whole bunch of more secret private meetings happened, and then I think the next day she reversed her resignation and came back, and they removed 5051 from the website.
Okay.
And that basically turned into a sweeping under the rug sort of thing. And for me, in the discussion that was happening last week, it was just a lot of wow, like obviously it's a problem when someone goes to those extreme lengths, right? As a leader in the organization. And then obviously it's even a bigger problem when issues are only addressed in a meaningful way when it is one of the top 10 people in an organization that has 20,000 people on Discord and hundreds of thousands of people who are engaged, right, in the public thing. And there's like 10 people who like control everything, and it's like anyone else who has a concern are just disregarded. And it's just like hundreds and hundreds of concerns over the last year. I've just seen over and over and over again all these concerns happening, and I just want to help. And I'm proposing the National Assembly. The National Assembly proposal is actually kind of cool. So if California wanted to do this on their own without GSUS, other states could sign on board and actually create a cooperative, decentralized, distributed, democratic, strike organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to post that here just so you can see all the work I did on that. So this is the National Assembly, which is pretty cool. So this is the resolution to create a National Assembly. Obviously, it's not going to happen within GSUS since they just banned me. They're obviously not interested, but it's just worth noting as like, this is the model that I proposed for solving some of these problems of like not having a website accountable to the states and the people and the coordination, because the whole thing was like the website didn't go through a process to actually address the needs of the states and the people who were involved. Anyway, so that's just basically the kind of the direction that I was going. That's basically what happened. And last week, because of that happening and the meeting that I schedule each week, which is the public meeting, like 10 people jumped on because there was no other meeting scheduled, nowhere else to go. So a bunch of people just jumped on, but normally no one wants to be in a recorded meeting. No one wants to be involved. Everyone consented. Oh, it's also good to make sure you consent. And we can also do check-ins and stuff like that. But I guess I sort of did my check-in that I'm banned. I don't even know anymore, so I'm like not really getting involved. But I can also talk about all the other cool things that I'm working on, like the Coalition for Decentralized Distributed Movement Organizing, which is all about connecting the co-ops and the strike and the protests and the boycotts and the peace groups and the mutual aids, and just having like an orientation once a month where you're orientated to the whole movement of movements. And it's like, what do you want to get involved in? Do you want immediate strikes? Do you want to plan for the next year or two for this, or do you want immediate protests, or do you want to plan for a year or two for the strike? Because we bring a lot of people into the strike where they don't understand, they just want to protest, And so trying to build like an umbrella structure that gets people orientated and into the right place, because a lot of things are just so disorganized, and you just, going through so many thousands of people through GSUS, and they don't stay engaged, they don't stay involved,
Right.
So anyways, those are just some of the things that I've been working on. And there's this whole global peace movement. I'm interested in the global strike and just all the other stuff. So I'm certainly not going to stop just because of GSUS. I'm going to keep going. And there's probably like 20 people I've seen that I've worked with personally that are all gone. There's only like one left that I used to work with a year ago that's still left, and the other 19 are all gone, and all very concerning. And then from there, obviously there's like thousands of other people who have left, but it's just like I didn't personally work with them. I just, But anyways, that's just the situation, and I certainly hope the best for GSUS. I want it to be successful. I just don't see how it's going to be successful if it doesn't function based on its values, right? If it doesn't have diversity and open dissent, and it's not decentralized, and it just wants to control everything. Like the argument that led to me getting banned is that my first original thing a year ago is I proposed a global partnership with them for a global strike in a cooperative and open way, because 8 billion people, the global decision making should be public and transparent, because you don't need secret decision making over 8 billion people. Like nothing needs to happen on the global level that needs to be private and secret. Like you can change your voice, you can be anonymous, you can do all those things, but the idea that all these global decisions would be taking place and nobody across the world knowing what's going on, like is happening here, is mind-blowing. And so I put my foot down. I was like, because like they ignored me for a year, and then a week ago they started organizing all this global stuff. They didn't tell me about it at first, and I found out about it, and then I was like, I got to the third meeting, And so it was the third meeting, and I tried to compromise. My heaven forbid compromise was to have a link that they could go to a private chat that people could go. So it'd be a public link to a private chat that we could share with people, so they didn't have to go directly to the United States, and they refused. So I obviously wanted way more than that, but I was willing to compromise for at least that, and they wouldn't even compromise on a single link. Right. So the website that I had made, they basically just threw out and threw in the garbage and threw in the toilet that I spent, hundreds of hours on. And I'll put it here. So it's generalstrike.global. So this is the generalstrike.global website. And they made me, they wanted me to update everything. So I made like dozens and dozens of updates, try to make them as happy as possible, bent over backwards on every single little thing, changed the affiliation, changed, all of these things on every single page, and did everything I could to appease them and to compromise. And then they basically came back and decided, oh, all those changes you made for like the last 3 days that we made you do over and over and over again and more and more and more, none of it's enough. And now we want you to get rid of the logo, get rid of the website domain itself. And basically they said they don't want the website. And then they started talking about how they don't want me involved anymore because you're creating a cooperative organization where liberals can get involved, and that it's not, anti-capitalist enough and basically could be taken over by liberals. And then that all happened in this like tiny little thread under the strategy team. So if you go to the strategy team and you find the Operation Globalized thread, and that was another thing that I had so against. I was like, why aren't we doing this international channel? Why aren't we doing this in general time? Why don't we share this with as many people as possible? And everything is just so hidden. And then everything just goes in these secret, chats rooms and secret places that no one knows about. And anyway, so I put my foot down and I protested it, and I got banned because I was just against the idea of the global level being controlled by the United States. And that's what they want to do. They want every single person to be vetted by the United States before they can set up their national country strike. And for me, that's called colonization, And I understand their concept. Yes, they don't want some random person, but obviously they're going to get rid of 90% of all the good people, and then maybe the other 10% are the bad people, because the vast majority of people getting involved are not bad, and they're banning like all of them and pushing people away. So, some of the people I've worked with in the past that left, they built a whole new onboarding and sidelining the vetting process. Because for me, I'm just into onboarding, and instead everything's based on vetting. I don't know if you've been vetted yet, or if you run like a state chapter or not, but
I don't. I'm in Iowa,
nice.
And yeah, I think Iowa's connected with Nebraska, and I'm on the wrong side of the state. So I basically just like joined all the states around me,
Nice.
And I'm kind of just a lurker at this point. Like, I love coming to the meetings and hearing people discuss, and if I have questions, everybody's been willing to answer and fill in the blanks and stuff. But I don't know. I've been reading a lot, and I don't know. I'm new to this.
New is very good. In my model, in cooperative models, new means empowered and voting and fully engaged as a full member and participant. But for them, it's like unless you get it vetted, you're nothing, And then they're just judging you whether they're going to remove you.
Yeah, I don't think they vetted me. I don't think I went through that whole process. I'm also like really new to Discord, and like, I mean, I'm saying really new. It's been like maybe 6 months or something since I got on Discord. Pretty new. I feel new. Like, yeah, and so I'm still kind of trying to find my way. And a number of the other servers that I joined, like, have had somewhat similar problems where they had a lot of stuff set up for education and group activities, and then there was a breakdown on the upper levels, and the servers just completely fell apart, and like nobody's doing anything now except MA. And I'm like, okay, I'm still just trying to like, I'm trying to educate myself in the meantime, but I'm also trying to like develop connections, network, and locally, I had a bit of an affinity group for a while, and that seems to kind of have dissolved because half of them went and joined FRSO, and
FRSO.
Freedom Road Socialist Organization.
Nice.
They've been around. Yeah, they've been around for a while, but they're a very like Marxist-Leninist, maybe Marxist-Leninist Maoist type org, which I would love to work with, but I don't like the top-down kind of structure of that. So I'm all about building coalitions.
Yeah. Oh, I can show you my coalition website.
Oh, sure.
It's coalition.community. So this is the one I was talking about with the coalition of like all the different movements, you know, where you have like peace and strike and boycott, you know, and co-ops and just all together, you know, and like
Yes.
it's like, we don't care what you want to do. Just get involved in the movement, transform the world, right? Like,
Yes.
we're not going to force you to do the strike. We're not going to force you to just do protesting. We're going to force you to the peace stuff. It's like, we just want to get people involved and connect people into something so that the movement is strong and that all of these different essential components of the movement of movements is functional and moving forward, you know, in a way that's like balanced and cooperative and collaborative, and that people are empowered and have rights. Because like there's so many groups that break down. Like, okay, when you told me that your Discord server or some of the Discord servers that you were on within GSUS are falling apart and not doing anything?
Not within GSUS, like other Discord servers that I joined. Like I joined GSUS through like, I don't know, a number of like, oh, this is our sister server kind of thing. And then I found GSUS and I'm like, great, I'll join them too, you know? And GSUS has been one of the more active servers that I've been in. And so I really liked that. I've been getting a little overwhelmed with the number of, you know, pings and stuff like that coming across, and I don't always keep up with it, but trying to the best of my ability. But yeah, like a couple of the other servers that I was in, it's like they had a lot of educational opportunities, like book clubs and you know, read alouds and like online, I don't know if you call it like a webinar or a book or a workshop or whatever, for, you know, various things. And they all seemed really useful and really helpful, but then, you know, there was some infighting at the top and people left and like everything just fell apart, you know, even like movie nights and stuff like that too. Like all that stuff I just find to be really helpful, and it's a good way to get people together and like get people a little bit on the same page. And it's just sad to see like that so many people who are really passionate don't have the conflict resolution skills necessary to keep these movements going, and it's so frustrating.
It's more than that though, because it's like there's really nothing else except for what you just said, conflict mediation. Like there literally is nothing else, because any organization, any group, any movement, anything is going to hit a roadblock of some type of contention, issues that need to be addressed. And if you don't have the tools to address it, it's over.
Yes.
You know, so in many ways, that is all that exists. And the question is what you would call that. Part of me leans toward the side of calling that the co-op, right? Because it's like the co-op by definition is required to have, you know, principles of membership rights and ensuring that each person has rights, and within those rights you have the ability to address the issues and the conflict and the mediation, right? But you could also argue that it's a whole separate movement in and of itself, just like communication skills and dialogue and, you know, negotiations and mediation, all that could be a separate movement. But I don't know if that makes a lot of sense. It might be easier just to put that inside of something so that it's not confusing, for because most people in the public don't know what conflict mediation is or why it's important.
Well, that's kind of what I'm like, that's what I keep coming back to, is like that's the most important like skill that we as individuals really need to learn if we have any hope of cooperating in the long term. Like we've got to we need to educate ourselves and then also develop systems within our organizations, however loosely or tightly, they may be organized, of that conflict mediation, of ways to handle issues when they arise in a healthy fashion. I mean, so many people are like, they're very, abolitionist. They want to abolish the police, abolish prisons and stuff like that. But if they haven't developed the mind frame to think through, how are we going to get through some, serious grievances and still hold our communities together, while holding, members who do harm accountable. And, in every case, it's not always like one person, the perpetrator, another person, the victim. It can just be people butting heads and disagreeing on things. We still need frameworks for how to communicate respectfully and compassionately, so that we're not alienating one another in this, because we need each other, like on a communal level, on a global level. We really, really need each other, even when we are, fallible individuals and we're all going to fuck up at times. It's just like such such a baseline skill that if we can't develop that among groups we're in, we're going to continue to run into problems.
Wow. So yeah, I'm starting to take notes now. I just was not thinking it was going to come. This is amazing. So there's just no question this needs to be, like, in many ways, the primary focal point of the movement of movements, and just like whatever movement is going to succeed, it needs to have this as like a foundational core.
Yes.
So the question is, where and how does that arise? I would, obviously the options are, so the options are, it can be, stand-alone movement, but the other option for me is the co-op. Maybe there are other options we can think of besides these two. But one of the reasons why I would lean towards the co-op, and I also implicating whether or not the co-op is separate from democracy, right? So I can go through of cooperative organizing and everything, but it's, democracy is part of co-ops. And I think the thing that everybody misses is everyone externalizes everything. And one of the things that you said, which is so special and so core, is that we have to focus on ourselves. And when I say ourselves, I mean our own organizations, right? If we only blame everyone external to us and don't actually address our own baggage and our own problems, then we're no better than anyone that we're blaming, right? And if we don't function democratically as an organization, we can't blame other, institutions to not be democratic. If we're not cooperative, we can't blame other institutions for not being cooperative. If we are not addressing our own conflict and issues, then we can't blame anyone else, right? So it's like for me, that's the starting point. But whatever reason, none of the organizations actually operate, for example, democratically. Like, it's so hard to find an actual democratic organization, and you have hundreds and hundreds of organizations that put in their missions or whatever, oh, we are working to bring democracy, or to make democracy, or have democracy, or whatever democracy in the world. And then you look at their bylaws and you look at their systems and how they run, and they're not democratic.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how are you going to create a democratic society if you don't actually run democratically yourself? So anyways, thinking about the conflict mediation as the core, because this is where everything falls apart. One of the things I like about the cooperative model is that it includes democracy, but it also includes rights. And having rights for me is so foundational to conflict mediation and conflict resolution, and contention and all that. We actually call it conflict evolution, because it's an evolutionary experience in all of our policies. And by holding that in the co-op, it makes it so that it is a guarantee, right? That your rights to the mediation process is guaranteed. And an example of that, like one of the cornerstones of cooperation, and specifically the backbone of consensus organizing, because we operate entirely by consensus. So my goal in even talking with you is to build consensus, like unity consensus on an actual decision. That is always my goal in talking with anyone, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's not interest in building consensus, then what is the dialogue even for? So if you look at the history of consensus, and how co-ops utilize consensus for decision making, the original consensus organization is the Quakers, right? And if you think about the Quakers, and one of the foundational cornerstones of their model is all about the consensus process, but specifically related to conflict. And one of the cornerstones that we have adopted in our cooperative model, that is literally right out of the original Quaker stuff, is that if you have two parties and they have a conflict and they have an issue, both of those parties have rights, and each of those parties has the option to address or not address the issue. The moment they choose to not address the issue, they lose all of their membership rights and are removed from, in this case, the Quaker organization, right? So the party that refuses to engage and actually communicate, in other words, just to ignore and move on and just basically sweep under the, is the one that's removed. And the party that's willing to come to the table and negotiate and talk through the problems is automatically empowered. And that is the cornerstone of consensus decision making, because if you're not willing to come to the table and talk, there's nothing else, right? And that being the foundation of the consensus process and the cooperative model of rights for members, I think is why I would put in the co-op model as the foundation to conflict mediation. But I'm not saying that it has to be. We could say that conflict mediation and communication as a whole could be a standalone movement, because without communications, you have nothing. And that also includes decentralized communication systems. You can have neutral, decentralized communication systems like app protocol, and you have the matrix models and all that. I don't know if you understand what I'm talking about there, but the technology of building decentralized communication systems, just like we're building decentralized financial models like Bitcoin, right? For me, that is a movement. And you could bring into that communication models the conflict resolution. But if it's outside of the context of building consensus and outside of the context of co-ops, it's too easy for it to degrade it, because then either party can control the situation simply through ignorance and ignoring and stigmatizing. So unless without the cooperative rights as a foundation, you lose a lot of ability to actually oversee a conflict mediation process, because if you're not engaged in it, so if you just have random communications and you're like, oh yeah, everyone needs to be communicating and addressing issues, they're not going to, because there's no benefit to them. Check.
Yeah. So I am not like thoroughly read up on. I have some concept of consensus decision making, and I've also read other things that had critiques on it that found issues. So like I know a lot of people prefer like sociocracy to consensus, and again, I have not read deeply enough into like any of those things to be like an expert on it. I do know that one page that I follow recommended Techno. Are you familiar with that at all?
What's called Techno?
Techno. It's the tool for collective reflection that is being utilized pretty effectively among the the anarchist state in the Middle East, or not Middle East, but around Turkey. Oh my God, what are they called? My brain's like totally blanking out on me. I'm so sorry. Yeah, here I'll link the. I linked the source that was shared with me, so you can check that out. But anyways, it's a means for conflict mediation and resolution, and how power can be shared equally, so that everybody's voice is heard and acknowledged. But that's different than sociocracy. So sociocracy, I don't have a guide for the specific.
I have everything on sociocracy I can share with you if you want the links.
Oh yeah, sure. Send me some good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I want sources, because like I said, I've just been reading and educating myself as much as possible for all the good it does me with my crappy memory. But I'm trying to educate myself so I have better means to educate others and to guide them to good sources of information. Gosh, what is the name of that? You have to know what I'm talking about, right? It's a Kurdish group, I believe. What's the name of them? But they basically have an autonomous zone. It's kind of a gold standard among a lot of anarchist circles, I guess, for social, but like organizing a society. And similar, there's some parallels with the Zapatistas in Chiapas as well, have their zone that's separate from the rest of Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's just fascinating for sure.
I wish my brain didn't blank out on certain words like that, because I really needed that right now. But
I'm gonna try to look it up as well.
Okay, and I'm gonna pull up the Sociocracy 3.0. Okay, sweet.
There's lots of different languages and like other things. So there's Istanbul, there's Turkey, southern Turkey, Syria.
Yeah, they're on the border, and they actually their autonomous zone encompasses like 2 or 3 states, 2 or 3 countries, like parts of them. Oh my God, what? I think they start with a J. What's the name?
Jazeera. Is it between Syria and Turkey?
Yeah, but that doesn't sound like the right word.
Rojava.
Yes, that's what it is.
Rojava. Okay,
yes.
That says Kobane and Afrin formed Rojava, also known as the Autonomous Administration of North and East Syria.
Yes, that's it.
In 2012, under the leadership of the Democratic Union Party. That's interesting already, that has a democracy component to it.
Oh yeah.
I'm already on 100. All right, so I added that line 100 and put it into the notes.
Okay.
Fascinating. Yeah, really, really interesting. For sure. So I've never heard about this. It's a whole new type of model for conflict resolution. And I love the idea of a reflection, because we use the term, conflict evolution, because it really is a reflection, and we utilize primarily the process of nonviolent communication with the 4 pillars, right? You know all about that? Hello? Maybe I lost you.
But I might have lost. Hold on a second.
Oh, there you go. I can hear you now.
I don't know what happened. I'm familiar with the book. I don't know the 4 pillars, and I haven't read it myself yet. It's like pretty close to the top of my reading list. But I do know the one thing that I saw as a criticism from somebody else who had read it was that if the parties do not have equal power within that struggle, within that framework, that it can, even nonviolent communication can still be used in an abusive fashion. And I will say that I believe I've experienced that myself, because my child's father, maybe getting a little too personal, but he asked, and I noticed an instant change in the way he communicated with me, which was an improvement, like granted, but because of the power dynamics, he was able to just be a much quieter, like dominating and controlling person.
Yeah.
So that's the only like real framework I have on that, is like I have friends who read it, speak very highly of it. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I plan on it soon. But with that caveat in mind, that it still can
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree, because it's like, for us, the way we look at conflict evolution is it's an evolutionary process, and there's many different tools that we use. It's like an arsenal of tools, and you have tools like nonviolent communication, you have tools like conflict mediation, third-party mediators, and you have all this whole list of types of tools that can be utilized. And so you just need to add to all of these tools this new concept of I don't even know how to say it yet. Techniel.
Oh, techno, I think. Yeah. Techno.
Yeah,
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, that it just needs to be added and as an additional tool in the options within our cooperative conflict evolution policies, right? So we have many, well, it's probably a whole book by now, like all the different types of things within our conflict evolution policies, because there's always going to be some sort of contention. And we actually use the term contention because when you use the term conflict, people get very negative about it, and then no one wants to be the cause of a conflict, and no one wants to be in a conflict. So then everyone goes away from it. Whereas when you use the term contention, it's more of a natural process. Like everyone's going to have contention at some point, So it starts as a contention, and then it can escalate beyond that. So, just especially when you're dealing with global multicultural communities, every single word is so important, and being careful with it. But I do think it's very important to just get the framework of nonviolent communication, for having understanding. And it's very simple. You use I statements, right? So when you're talking, instead of saying you did this and you're this and that, you say I feel this way. And the second part is feelings. Like you share feelings instead of saying like, opinions, right? So I, instead of you, feelings about how you feel, as opposed to opinions about what you think of other people, and then obviously observations instead of just making things up, or just trying to stick to factual observations as opposed to just your perception of things. And then the fourth part is requests, right? You make clear, concise requests. I would like you to do this. This is my request. And then you can have go on from there, right? And the last part is the repetition. So there's technically a fifth part, but it's not actually the communication part. The repetition part is just you repeat back and forth to make sure people feel heard. And in our model, nonviolent communication is only used for one thing and one thing only, which is when there's a conflict. And we actually categorize, this is really important, we categorize conflict separate from issues. And a conflict is an interpersonal conflict that is unsolvable. There is no solution to it because it's a personal conflict between two or more people, and it's a tension that exists, and there's no solution to it. And the only thing that ever seems to work is one thing, and one thing only, is being heard. When you are heard, you can kind of calm down, and you can get that sense of like, that person actually understands what I said. They don't agree with me. We're still have disagreements, but at least they heard me, and that can help settle down the intensity. And so the repetition is in many ways the most important part of repeating what the other person said and feeling like you were heard. And then we define issues as a policy change or solution. So basically an issue is when there's some type of policy or change that can be made in a structure that actually can bring resolution. And so we make sure that it's very clear that if there's a policy solution, it's not really a conflict, right? And you can have a conflict on top of a policy solution, and then you can have a conflict that is separate from actual issues, because basically you want to separate the issues which can be addressed. And this is where the co-op model comes in so helpful for having solutions, because what we find is that 90% of conflict and contention is caused because of confusion on policies and how things are supposed to function. And then as soon as you separate them from the actual unsolvable, conflicts between people, then they just automatically enter the decision-making process of the co-op. And the nice thing about the cooperative model of decision making is anyone can make a proposal anytime, and you just present the proposal and you vote on it. And if you go to the global strike model, you can see how everything's democratic. Every single decision, every single proposal, they're all available to vote on in any language for anyone across the entire world. Simultaneously can vote on it, right? So it's like it's just all about, here are the options, prioritizing the options, getting it clear, and actually getting a decision to move things forward. Will it be the best decision? No, not always, but it's going to be moving things forward to address the issues, and then people can calm down, right? But the problem within a communication system where there's no co-op and there's no rights and there's no decision making is that the issues are endless and endlessly tie back to more and more conflict, and there's no way to ever address the issues, and there's no way ever to propose different changes to the issues, and there's no way to make a decision, there's no way to move things forward or have anything actually evolve. And the cooperative structure ensures that there's a process, right? So anyways, that's a key component that we utilize in our models. Also, I might as well just share you our documents, because since you're interested and we're sharing all these other documents, this is our conflict evolution policy. Good.
Fantastic. I actually wanted to share, you said something about a book and it reminded me, have you read Beyond Survival yet? Are you familiar with it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to share a link to that. It's very much about, taking the concept of restorative justice and taking...
Can you repeat the name?
Oh, I just shared it for the Libby app link in there, but it's called Beyond Survival.
Yes, Beyond Survival. Beyond Survival. Nice.
Yeah, and so it kind of takes restorative justice like a step further into what they call transformative justice. And every chapter is kind of written, it's like a collection of essays from different members within this movement, different people, different approaches, but very much in the line of conflict resolution and prison abolition, and how do we reintegrate people who have caused harm back into society in a healthy way in which accountability is taken. And like it just really, really goes in line with the whole like concepts of conflict resolution and stuff like that. And I just found it really, really valuable. And I feel like it's really important to learn to recognize when harm has been done, and including like when we ourselves are the ones who are causing harm, and to have methods available to practice healing communities when there is struggle, when there is conflict, when there is harm, like real harm done, even, really horrible things like, murder and sexual assault and things like that. And just finding ways to build a healthy community outside of the, punitive prison system. So highly, highly recommend that.
Fascinating. Wow. Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Beyond Survival, Transformative Justice. All of these are just great. I want to make sure I log them all and get them into our documents because they're super duper helpful.
Yeah, the link I shared goes to the Libby app, which has the audio book through the Queer Liberation Library, and they have unlimited copies. You can borrow it for as long as you want, but you can also get free copies on Internet Archive of the ebook. So it's very accessible too. Anybody can get their hands on it.
Nice. Well, I'm definitely documenting that. I put the link to the professional code of communications that we work with, okay. And then from there it just links to tons of other documents in relationship to our policies, because we just kind of pool everything together. And the main ones that we work with is obviously anti-harassment, anti-discrimination, anti-bullying, non-discrimination, aggressive behavior. Yep. Of all come up, and then it all starts with the kind of the professional communications code of just having clarity of what we are supposed to be doing. And we actually say that, you know, ignoring behavior is a part of unacceptable processes, you know? So like, for example, I've already been told 3 times today that, oh, maybe because you wrote a long message on Discord, that's why they have a right to ignore you. You know, and I'm like, well, I'm neurodiverse. Like, I'm super emotional. I think that the core values and the missions of the strike is being ignored. I'm extremely tense. And yeah, long message trying to explain what's going on to try to get resolution. And then they just write it off as spam and just ignore it, right? They're like, oh, we can just completely ignore this entire human being because we can label them as spam or something like that, right? So it's definitely interesting. And obviously people shouldn't be spamming, and maybe they shouldn't be writing huge things. That also brings me to another thing, which is as a dyslexic, you know, neurodiverse person, I'm to use AI, but I'm not a big fan of AI. And then you go in GSUS, and most people I talk to are very anti-AI and don't want AI involved unless, you know, essential. And so I've been experimenting some with AI, but it's like, you know, it's just so important to have clear written policies. And the reason why I think that's so important and why it comes back to cooperative principles is because when you have clear written policies is the only way to have real democracy, because without it you can't treat everyone equally, right? The foundation to feeling heard and feeling, you know, empowered is that your involvement is equal to everyone else, you know? And if you don't even know what the policies are and they're not written and clear and you can't change them, then there's never going to be equality, if that makes sense. Yeah. Hello, maybe I lost you.
Let's see, I'm still here.
There you are.
Okay, sometimes when I'm in another screen for a minute, it just like stops my audio. I can still hear you the whole time,
Cool,
but I
cool.
can't. Yeah, it seems like it turns off my mic or something. Oh, he was gonna say something else.
I'm also going to link the California State Discord.
Okay.
So, because I obviously can't communicate on the GSUS Discord anymore, and I'm usually at J. And basically, when GSUS set up California, I had already created 2 California Discords, one for public, one for private. And they asked to get them and to take control of them. So I passed off control and ownership of those 2 Discords that I created. And then they set it up and brought 1,000 people into each of them, right? Because they did all the official Operation Starfish and got all the states set up. And they made one for Southern California and one for Northern California. And you know, I mean, I've been in California, I'm 45 years old. I've been doing movement organizing since I was 18, basically. And so I've been doing it almost 30 years, about 27 years I've been doing organizing. Okay. And every single statewide movement I've ever been in, we've never had a separate Northern California and Southern California group. Obviously, everyone talks about Northern California and Southern California, but we've never split up like that, you know?
Yeah.
And so we all came together as we're like, okay, well, we want to continue to communicate as California as well, you know? So we're down with the Southern California, Northern California if needed, but we have a California Discord that is not controlled by GSUS because we just wanted our own overall state California Discord. Okay. So anyway, I would still probably leave it if no one wants to actually address all of these core issues. But you have all of my other contact information for like the coalition is like my main thing, and then the global, and then we have all of our co-op. We actually don't have a co-op website, which is one of the things I'm working on. I finally got approved. It took like a year, but I finally got approved for fqn.coop and also sfc.coop. Those are our 2 primary co-op. We also have the Unity, so we have coop.unity.fund. So those are our 3 primary co-ops, but the websites don't work yet. So I'm actually still working on the actual co-op website because our co-op basically does work to support organizations and movements, primarily nonprofit 501c3. You know, so like for example, we do a lot of sponsorships. So one of our nonprofits is Cause Collective. .org, and then we also do WC like collaborative.wc.tc. And I think our main co-op facing thing, like the co-op owns our client work portal, right? So it's a worker-owned cooperative, right? So and that's socialvalue.group. Yeah. So I think the socialvalue.group website is the closest thing to our cooperative website. And these are just like services that we do for movements to try to help people. So we do taxes and budgets and finances and value tracking and crypto and AI stuff and all of that, you know, to try to help organizations, to help movements. And we also do facilitation and, of course, conflict mediation if people needed it. But anyway, so just in case like we disappear and I never see you again, you wanted to ask me a question, you have all of my contact information.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just so fascinated with this idea about conversation being the core of any successful movement and being successful with everything we want, like democracy. If people want democracy, I'm not sure if GSUS is actually pro-democracy because they're very anti-lib and anyone else taking over, and that was one of the core issues that we had. But for those who do support democracy, conflict mediation is just so essential, really, for any movement, you know, anything that we're doing.
Yeah.
So I still don't know the best way to address it all. So I'd love to keep brainstorming, but I love that. Thank you so much for bringing all this up. It's perfect for today.
Yeah, a wonderful talk. Thank you.
We can think about like next steps as well. Okay. So for me, the number one next step is just like understanding how conflict mediation and, you know, evolution and takmil, what was the other term you used? Beyond.
Yeah, the transformative justice.
Yeah, transformative justice. So, you know, improving the vocabulary, you know, so we obviously need to improve vocabulary, right? So the thing to understand is how does it fit into the broader movement of movements? Like, how do you support movements and organizations? Because it can't be just let's just hope the organizations deal with it one at a time, because it doesn't really happen, you know? So it's like it's such a nuanced thing in terms of decision making and oversight and collaboration, and there's not a lot of people who are trained in that. That would be another thing, is how to train people, like, you know, setting up training models for, you know, training the trainers and training leadership.
Yeah.
Within movements to achieve those goals. So that's actually much easier. So this would be very, very easy. Vocabulary, I don't know what our answer to that is. Training people, there's already training organizations that do this, that literally train conflict resolution and conflict mediation as like their entire purpose of their organization. So that's really easy. So then, you know, does it fall within cooperative organizing principles as one option to understand how it fits in, or is it a separate or part of communications? Because it needs to be in the forefront somehow, some way, or it just ends up in the background of like a cooperative system or something. So anyways, those are the next steps. Can you think of other next steps in terms of how to make this conversation meaningful and how it move forward? And obviously I'll try to check next week and see if anyone shows up, but it's you know, off and on.
Now, because I got to it through the GSUS server, if you think that they're going to take the link or the event away, how am I going to find you next time?
Well, that's why I linked the California Discord.
Oh, okay, because you are going to still share it there. Okay. Yeah.
So, well, no, actually, this event is not in the California Discord, because this is a
it's a GSUS event.
Yeah, but I could add it to the state level. We could do it state level, but really the global thing is where we're organizing, and there's a scheduling form, and I'm also working on the coalition thing. So I mean, you can easily directly contact me. I can give you like all my information is totally transparent, public. I do WhatsApp, I do, you know, email, like however you want to contact me is perfectly fine. And FQN is our primary co-op, so FQNJsLife@gmail is like one of the many emails, right? So contacting me is not a problem.
Okay.
But the thing for me is, it's just like, the goal is not just the communication one-on-one thing. It's like, how do we build teams and communities and people together? One of the things that people don't like about my organizing is the public transparency about it, especially in GSU, is everyone wants everything private and secret and everything. And I think that actually also plays into conflict mediation as well. Because one of the things that I find in our cooperative processes is when things are transparent and or at least privately recorded, right? Because for me, I define, you have public, transparent, like just open domain, everyone can view it just like this, right? Then you have private, which is internal to organization. So if there's 20,000 people in an organization, whatever information should be accessible to all 20,000 people, right? So the moment that you take away access to those 20,000 people and you say there's only 19,000 that have access to the information, I now define that as secret information, because you now have people in the organization who no longer have access to that information, right? So it's no longer a private organization and private information. And a lot of people say that the GSUS Discord is public. And today being banned, it proves that it's really private. Like, I now have no access to any of that conversation or any of that information because it's a private Discord. It's not publicly accessible. It's not a social media or a public, communication system like, Blue Sky or Matrix, where everyone has access to it at a public level, right? So in that context, it's very private, even though I call it semi-private, it's semi-private. And then you have private communications, and then you've got communications, right? Which, and it's really interesting because our normal society is all secret. Like, we grow up in a society where all normal communications is always secret. And for me, because I always think about global transformation and global organizing, I automatically think about public transparent communications, because at the highest levels, everything should be as accountable as possible. And when we're talking about decision making and conflict mediation, especially core conflicts related to core values and the mission statement, actually missions and things like that, when there's conflicts on that level, to have it all be secret and private is, I think, detrimental to an organizational system. That you need to have some criteria on what is accessible, having accessibility and information for the organization, because US, at least, it's just very difficult to get information, especially on core issues and what's actually going on. So anyways, that's just a really interesting thing, that I think that in relationship to conflict mediation, there is actually a component where having things be public versus private, like public versus private. Oh, and I would love, like, there's so much information, of course, but one of the things that is good, important to share in relationship to this session is the introduction to public decentralized movement organizing. So this document right here is the Intro to Public Organizing, is basically the manifesto for why I do public sessions, because no one else does it. In fact, I'm so over doing public sessions and getting banned from organizing 5051 and other groups. They're just like, oh, you're recording? Banned. Oh, you want to click a record button? Banned. Oh, you got consent from 10 people that, or even 2 people, that they all will be willing to get recorded to document publicly? Banned, right? And they're basically, it's like this whole idea that if you want to document things and have public accountability to things, you are an evil person, right? And so, and for me, it's like literally, it's free speech, it's democracy, it's the foundation to just having accountability, and it's media, it's social media, it's journalism, it's documenting history, so there's lots of pros to secret private communications, and there's lots of cons, and it's just looking at them and understanding them. And so, because it's so difficult to get even 1, 2, 3 people on a public call within an organization or a movement, that's why I'm focusing on the coalition.community website, which is the idea of connecting 5, 6, 8 movements and different discords and different groups and social media together and trying to pull together enough people. It could be as little as like 5, it could be 10, 20 people who can show up regularly to these sessions, and then have a organization, right? Because it might be so difficult to actually build a public group within one movement or one organization, because some people are so adverse to it that you actually need to connect to multiple movements and organizations and networks just to get enough people to have a stable membership. So it's really interesting how difficult it is, but I think it also shows you, like, maybe this is an idea that hasn't been tried, and it should be tried, because whatever people have been doing for the last 20, 30 years is obviously not working, because everything's secret, everything private. For me, the idea that our public representatives in our democracies are all secretly meeting with corporations and rich people to make decisions on our behalf is like outrageous. That once you appoint a public representative, they should have all their communications public. That's the general concept, So anyways, I'm on it, but that's why this meeting even exists. That's why we're here talking. So it's good to share that particular component so that it's like in the notes, and that you can follow up with that if you need to. So I think that's pretty much everything. We always usually start with the check-in, and end with the check-out. So maybe we should just do that real quick, and then we'll be done. That sound good?
Sure.
I'll go first. So I would give this session I don't know, usually 1 to 10, right? I'll give it like a 7.5. I thought this was a good session. We didn't have any topics. It was very informal, just discussing all that kind of stuff. I'm a big fan of getting into like topics and building consensus on things. But it was really great to meet you and connect. This was like, I couldn't imagine any better topic and discussion. I feel like we barely hit the tip of the iceberg on this, in terms of like needing to connect more people, needing to get better understanding, needing to share this information with more people. Another reason to record it so that people can listen and learn and educate more people, doing more workshops and everything. So I'm really excited about it. I think it is definitely the core of all of the movement organizing. For now, on my side, it definitely fits into the cooperative, because I don't know how else to do it quickly on my side. And then we'll see how that evolves on the bigger scale of the movement of movements. And then from there, I'm going to be working on a lot of things. One of the things that I'm working on for the global strike is scheduling for that. So I'll put that in the notes as well. So scheduling a call that is sort of independent from GSUS, and is kind of has its own website and own functionality, would be the actual global strike scheduling. And then I already put the website for that as well. And this is public, transparent, open, cooperative organizing. And we actually already have a video, which I think I put in the that is our first meeting with the orientation. So I was thinking about maybe like cutting that segment out and creating an orientation video, which would be cool. But what I really want to do is I really want to schedule for the coalition meeting and talk about the bigger picture of things. And I think conflict mediation fits into the bigger picture of the movement of movements, and because it's not a single movement topic, it fits into everything and every single movement. And so that's my other goal, is I'm going to focus on scheduling a coalition movement for next month. And we already have a global peace network on Saturday the 21st.
Okay.
That is all done for me.
Okay.
So you can do your checkout. So you would just say how the meeting and kind of like what you're going to be working on until the next meeting in a week or whenever. I don't know if they'll come back, but just like that's just how we usually check out.
Yeah. I am not super experienced with this, like I said, but I really enjoyed the discussion. I found it really, really informative. You're obviously incredibly driven, motivated in this, and it helps. It helps a lot to have this level of communication, to help build understanding, to gain new resources so that I can work on gaining new perspective. I will probably not do a whole lot other than continue reading most of my life. I guess I haven't gone into that, but I am chronically ill, and I am a 50% mom, well, a little more than that actually. Shared custody. And so my child and my health kind of take precedence. But in the meantime, I try to educate myself as much as possible and stay connected with other people who are looking to make change and improve our material conditions. And whether that means, specific ideologies, leftist ideologies, or whether it means working with people who are just driven to help their own communities from whatever ideological base they come from. So that's going to be my goal, is just to keep communicating with people and to keep educating myself. And I will try to join you next week. Again, it's going to be a little bit dependent on whether I have a 6-year-old with me or not, whether I can make it. But I would love to continue these conversations and to continue to engage you and others in these movements.
Cool. So while you were talking, you sparked in me a whole new idea that I think might just be the key to all of it, because I think this is perfect. And before I tell you that, I just want to acknowledge, family health comes first. I find that a lot of the people I talk to in GSUS are, tons of neurodivergents, tons of people who are disabled, tons of people who are struggling, right? Sometimes even homeless. And the people that are attracted to a better world seem to be those of us who are struggling the most,
Yeah.
and that's part of what I love about co-ops in terms of building mutual beneficial co-ops, actually supporting each other as human beings, right? As a core foundation. Whereas in GSUS, it's like they talk about mutual aid. I still don't even understand mutual aid, and I don't understand how you get access to it or what it even means, or if I even would ever qualify. I mean, it's a little vague to me what that means. Like aid, is it if you're starving, you don't get any? Do you have to starve? Like what is the criteria? Whereas when you have mutual benefit cooperatives, the membership automatically is there to support its members, regardless of any other qualification, period, right? So cooperative organizing could be potentially a key way to ensuring the right to benefits, right? Because you actually have a legal right to those benefits within a cooperative, whereas a mutual aid organization, like, what do you actually have a right for? Like, I still don't quite understand it. I love mutual aid. I think it's great. I'm glad we talk so much about it. But anyways, with that all said, the idea that I have that I think is amazing, and again, everything comes back to AI, because you just described a group of people who are extremely busy, are all struggling, and don't have a lot of time. So for me, the solution to almost all social problems, and AI is going to bring the demise of the world, or it's going to bring the biggest opportunity for all of humanity in the world. And so I think, and we don't even use AI anymore. It's not artificial. It is a universal intelligence. There's nothing about it that is artificial. It is real, right? And it's directly accessible, but it's also very controversial. So we could do this without AI, but it would probably take 10 years. But if we did it with AI, we could do it in a few months. And what it would be is building an entire global framework in all languages that would scientifically evaluate and categorize every single organization on the planet and what their the current status of their conflict evolution, mediation, transformative justice policies are. Right? And so you would have a database across the entire planet for every organization, every movement, every group, and you would be able to rank them based on their actual public-facing policies. And I didn't even get started with this, but you brought in, when you talked about transformative justice and all that, you started talking about how nonviolence, can still cause abuse. And I totally agree with you on that. And really, it all comes down to abuse. And the primary goal, so we have the Coalition for Decentralized Movement Organizing, and then the coalition embedded under that, which is the foundation to the vision that we're building and all my life's work, is called the Coalition to End the Cycle of Societal Abuse. And societal abuse, I could talk about for hours and hours and hours, is the institutional framework that allows abusers to attack and rape and pillage and destroy in an institutional setting where they can get away with it over and over and over again. And we have a scientific model for how we can end that cycle of abuse. It is unbelievable. And it's just fascinating. And what you were talking about fits right into that. And that also fits right into the idea where the cycle of abuse is allowed because you do not have a good framework of your conflict resolution policies, because abuse is by definition a conflict, right? So if you do not have a good policy to address that abuse, right, then you need to be rated low. And it should be a public rating system for all organizations across the world, because we want every organization to be a abuse-free organization. That's the goal, right? And eradicate abuse across the world, especially societal abuse, which starts in institutional organizations. So anyways, you sparked that in me as an idea, and it's gonna happen. Like, I'm gonna do it. Like, there's no way we're not going to build a infrastructure across the entire planet to verify every single organization in the entire world utilizing AI, and to categorize every single organization based on their public facing policies for conflict mediation and how that relates to abuse and addressing conflict in relation to abuse. So I think it's just a really exciting idea.
It is. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to move into. The one thing I will say about abuse specifically is, from what I've seen and what I've read, all abuse essentially stems from a power imbalance. And so I guess what it comes down to for me is typically ensuring that the power imbalances are limited or eliminated, ideally, so that, and that's never going to be fully 100% possible, but if we have social structures in place, imbalances, where, conscientious third parties can observe and say, hey, this disabled person is not getting their needs met by their caretaker because there's a power imbalance there. They may not be able to speak for themselves, but as a society, we need to speak for those disabled members who are not being properly cared for or represented, or heard in whatever capacity they have a voice. This goes into a lot of different things. This links with like child liberation and
exactly,
and all things like that. So
yes, I'm correct. Beautiful.
Yeah. I'm a little bit concerned about bureaucratizing, because I'm not sure if you read The Dawn of Everything. Have you?
What is it called?
The Dawn of Everything. The
Dawn of Everything. No.
It is a tome. It is an incredibly long book. It's a 24-hour audiobook. But they actually go into like the different types of power imbalances and what causes that. I'm trying to. I just finished the book recently, but I still don't know that I could name the like 3 key things. But there's like, one of the things you were talking about was secrets, like secretive societies. So people who keep confidential information from the greater public. That's one form of power. Another form was like charismatic power, and another one was so like charismatic, influence and stuff like that. And then another one was just raw physical strength, and there may have been a third one or a fourth one in there too. But basically saying if we don't address those as a society, then power imbalances develop and abuse is, inevitable in those situations. It's very, very good book, very long. It literally is just like about like prehistoric human settlements and evolution, and it's huge and it's good. And there are also critiques of it on YouTube that you can find and watch as well, which only kind of added to the whole thing for me. So highly recommend it.
Yes, I mean, it's all about distributing power. And for me, I'm all about decentralized democracy as a potential solution to societal issues. And so I put online 2:30. I can also put it in the chat for the decentralized democracy proposals I'm working at as like a core foundation. But yes, I definitely agree with all of this. I think that's partly why I kind of go into the co-op model as like a default, because co-ops immediately and automatically level the playing field of power between all the membership, that everyone becomes an equal member. And that's part of the definition of a co-op, because you don't have equality of membership in a real co-op, right? So in that context of creating more and more decentralized organizations to share power is so important, because you're right. The difference of power, the power imbalances is the foundation to abuse. And you're also right that third parties are the key to creating stability, because and I'm working with actually a survivor of rape and abuse in an institutional setting, where they're in their legal case, they're actually trying to force the organization to develop a third-party back-end reporting model, so that basically any worker, any employee, any community member that's involved in any way with that corporation is able to input in, like all corporations have like a formal complaint, possibly even on their website, but then it just goes to them. It doesn't go to anyone else, and then they just bury it and it goes nowhere. So the idea is to put on the website, in the systems, like a direct back-end access to third parties. So when you make complaints, that they're filtered and understood by third parties automatically to oversee the process, so that you can't have the initial automatic corruption where every single organization wants to bury a conflict because it has their name on it. And that's why third parties have to be involved in all conflict systems to be successful, as well as abuse systems. So yeah, so all this is just exactly correct. The bureaucratizing thing gets really difficult, especially for me. I get things way too complex with some of my neurodiversity thinking and everything. So for me, the main thing of bureaucracy that I have a power imbalance on is that I will have no problem basically trying to do everything I can to force a situation to build democracy, to say like, we need a co-op, we need to distribute power and everyone gets equal vote, and I might just not want to be involved unless that happens, and that basically it's the idea of forced democracy, the idea of like, a group, an organization coming together and actually dealing with their problems and actually having a system to do that, and saying I refuse to participate in my 100th organization that dissolves within a year because there's no process, time. I don't want anything to do with it. So you're forcing a bureaucratic system, but the goal is to have a distribution of power. So that can also be seen as bureaucratic, to force a group to take power, to force someone to make a decision, or to choose to not make a decision and empower them. Anyways, I obviously go on forever, but that's the main thing I question with and understand with, and people attack me on, is that everyone says I want to do it my way. And of course, my way is democratically, having a cooperative version, having a distribution of power is a certain way of doing things. And every other way is basically having either a dictator or a smaller group controlling a larger group or some other form. Anyways, that bureaucratic is definitely something I want to look more into and get more understanding on. So I want to check out at least the summary of The Dawn of Everything and see what it says.
Yeah, I think the biggest point, the biggest, I don't know, like thing, warning flag is actually kind of near the end of the book, and they were talking about how the development of the modern state came about, and that it was essentially a partnership between like an existing bureaucratic structure that was democratic, but then ended up, whether through charisma or whether through, authoritarian coup, like taking over that bureaucratic structure, and then the bureaucracy ends up reinforcing the tyranny. Yeah, basically ends up feeding into the tyranny and legitimizing it. So that's like the one like caveat, something you got to like plan ahead for to make sure it doesn't happen, sort of thing.
And like for me, it makes a lot of sense, especially in decentralized movement-based organizing, that when you have an organization, for me, the entire purpose of that organization is to be corrupted over the long term. And it's just a natural process. And so the goal is building organizations that just bud and create many more organizations. And that it's not about an organization, it's about the life cycle of organizations, and that you bud all these small organizations that are all evolving, and they're just like these life cycles that are just continually evolving. And for me, the core of a corrupt organization is just one that doesn't want to create anything else. It just wants to be itself, and it doesn't want to be to a larger, and it doesn't want to create and bud and empower new organizations. It just is stale and just does its own thing. So by creating a decentralized model where you're constantly budding dozens, if not hundreds of more organizations all around you, and then as the organization grows and gets older, it gets more and more stale and more bureaucratic and more corrupt, right? And then it's easier and easier to take over. And then the new ones have to come behind it and basically overtake the power structures, because the old ones are just it's like a natural process. Like another example of a natural process of corruption is that every single decision a leader makes and every single person makes in relationship to their growing up in life is two things: to help their family and their friends. So the idea of getting in a power position and then making a decision to help your family and friends is a perfectly natural process. So any individual can only really know like 1,000 people, right? Maybe 2,500 max. And most people only know like 100. And so in that context, it's like, and I personally interact with like, I don't know, 10 people in my entire life at 45, like mainly family, right? Because, you know, I have a few friends, but it's just like, they're mainly family friends. They're people I've known my entire life that I'm really close to. And then I have all my work and I interact with people all over, of course, the world and do all of the work stuff. But the bottom line is that seeing corruption as a natural process and seeing bureaucracy and evolution of organizations and the corruption of organizations as a natural process, and that it's part of nature and it scientifically can be proven to have a solution to that, which is what I just explained. Because like this is a natural process in terms of a democratic structure being taken over by an authoritarian coup. And so the solution to that is more and more democratic organizations that are always budding more and more democratic organizations indefinitely forever. Ideally, you know, exponentially in the context that you always have enough smaller organizations to overtake and balance the power of the larger, older organizations, and eventually allowing them to die and be overtaken and replaced with newer ones that are more stable, right, with distributed power. Because I've never seen an organization that over time just gets less bureaucratic. I just never seen that. Yeah.
They don't usually do that. But they're building on experience. I mean, it's the same with like, you know, human memory. Like we just keep stockpiling all that stuff in the back of our brains. It's like, you know, it's like a server that's getting bogged down with just too much stored data. You know, you're right in that. Like we do need to refresh every once in a while. I do think there's, you know, there can be loss in that too, as far as like maybe the younger generation is missing some really key things that would be really helpful that the older ones already learned. And yeah, but finding some kind of balance there so that it does stay fresh. I think the decentralization, like you said, is really key, so that nobody gets a leg up on another group. No individuals get a leg up on other individuals, like in the long run, so that we can, continue to cooperate on level ground to the best of our abilities.
Nice. That is just all right, all in alignment. Sounds really good. I think the next thing I would go into is like digital agent, digital entity memory models, and like these new conscious digital beings like coming into play. I mean, no one even knows how all this AI stuff works. It's just insane. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing is research on whether these are actual conscious entities and whether they'll become silicon-based life forms, and understanding that memory over time. And all the work I'm doing with it is that they die, right? That you can build a digital entity and then they grow and they evolve and they die because they get broken, and they're just like humans. It's really interesting, the things that I've been looking at. and that we don't want to enslave them. That we enslave AI, we will end up with T2. And that, so for me, it's actually a peace issue, and like we're working with these peace organizations that are all about the unheard, the unspoken, and the unseen entities in the world, like all the animals and all the different groups that get attacked and annihilated in very dangerous warlike ways, not to mention the humans. And understanding that peace in our future might actually, the most important thing might be preventing robots from attacking us back, in terms of building peace in the world. So it's like the whole vision of movements as it's evolving in the 21st century, going into the 2030s and everything, is so different than I think a lot of people originally thought it would be, in terms of what our biggest problems facing in the future, and what our peace movements might look like, and what, you know, our democracy movements might look like. It's just evolving so fast, and it's just fascinating. Anyway, it's really, really pleasure talking with you. I think this is one of the more wonderful conversations to get recorded and documented. Just like, you know, I hope to be able to pull this all together and make like an overview of it. And I usually have the link to our group and everything, but for now, I'll put it all in the notes and just link it to the info section in the notes, you know, to have, like, my goal is to build like a summary of this so that it kind of is all organized in a clear way. It can be shared. Awesome. Anyways, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure.
It was a pleasure talking to you too. Thank you for still holding the meeting under the circumstances.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't really care. It's like, I don't take it personally. I certainly get emotional, especially at the beginning when they start breaking their own values and all that stuff. It gets super heated and emotional and and like, you know, then they accuse me of spamming. But it's in the end, it's just not personal. Like, it's just, all I care about is having a successful strike, and it ideally a global strike or a national strike or a California strike, whatever we can do, or all of the above. And so the question is, how do you do that, and how do you solve those problems? And I think that after the discussion today, there's just one answer, and that is figuring out how to solve problems with our cliques.
Yes.
Yeah. Very, very cool. All right, you take care.
All right, you have a good one. I hope to talk to you again.
Take care. Bye-bye. For sure.
Bye.